All right, guys, let's welcome Mike Spreitzer of DevilDriver to New Pod here on KNOTFEST.com. He is here to talk about Verona on Venus. The song Rodent is out now, and Popular Delusions out January 19th, 2024. Mike, how are we doing today?
Good.
So talk about how this project came about and what made you decide to start Verona on Venus.
Well, for starters, I had some free time during the pandemic, like a lot of people did. The idea of Verona on Venus, God, I think I first came up with the concept in 2018. It might have even been 2017. And I didn't really know what I wanted to do. I just wanted to do something different outside of DevilDriver. And I didn't even know if I wanted it to be metal. When I first started, I kind of forced myself to use a drum kit when I was programming drums, during the writing process, which I always do. I even tried to, write without using any kind of double kick. That didn't work. That didn't last very long. That lasted a month. But I just wanted to do something on my own. And then as time went on, I wanted, I've always been such a fan of industrial music. And I just wanted to go that direction.
So is it more like you said, like industrial? I mean, are we talking like old school industrial, like Ministry, Psalm 69, Mind is a Terrible Thing to Taste, or like more electronica?
Yes and no. The record kind of starts out more of a straightforward rock or metal record with some industrial influence in there. And as the record progresses, it gets a little bit more industrial toward the end. And then I finish it off with a cover of The Bones of Baby Dolls by Acid Bath,
which we need to talk about as well, because that's something that when I saw that, I was like, holy shit, that's my thing.
Why nobody has covered that song yet? There are a couple of versions that I found on Spotify that
are not very good.
No, they're not.
I've seen people cover Acid Bath before, and it never quite has that thing. But nobody's ever really covered them, to be honest with you.
I don't think they have, and I think they're one of the most underrated bands out there. That
agree more.
Definitely could have been huge if their bass player wasn't killed by a drunk driver. Gotta love Acid Bath.
But okay, so let's just go into that too, because I mean, when you think about that song, I mean, it is a very melancholy, acoustic, soft song. Like, I mean, why put that at the end of a record that is kind of influenced by industrial? Did you change it up at all, or?
I changed it up. There's a lot of parts in that song that I did not use from the original, and added a fair amount of electronics to it. I didn't go overboard with it. It's still acoustic. I'm still singing on it. I'm not screaming on it.
Do you sing on all the tracks?
Mm-hmm.
So how was that to go from? I mean, because I don't know how much backup vocals you do there.
I've done it on and off throughout the years. Mostly not doing it. I did do a little bit of singing when I was in college because I had to. It was part of my major. I just went in and, luckily I got a studio where nobody could hear me, so I was able to suck in silence in the beginning.
Right, suck in peace
until I kind of figured out which direction I wanted to go. And there were days in there that were brutal, where I would not get a single thing done. But sometimes I would, at the end of the day, it'd be like, wow, like I can't believe I got the whole song done in one day. It took a minute. There were days that were brutal. I didn't know how I was going to use my voice. I've always been under the impression, I've always felt that anybody could sing, and if you suck, there's a way, especially in metal, where you can use your voice to make it sound cool in some shape or form. Right. You just have to figure that out. And once you figure it out, it's all downhill from there.
I saw that Austin played drums on this, and Steve Evitts recorded those drums. Let's talk about getting Austin on drums and getting Steve Evitts to work on the record.
I gave Austin a bunch of demos. I probably gave him maybe 10 or 12. And I let him decide which ones he wanted to play drums on. So once he decided, he had told me that it was a little bit out of his comfort zone to do this stuff.
Excuse me.
It's not straightforward, brutal metal like he's used to playing. Bleed the Sky, DevilDriver, Chimera, quite a bit different. But I gave it to him, and I didn't hear what he put on him beforehand. I think I went over to his house, and we might have jammed through couple of the songs once or twice. It's been a long time. I think I recorded those drums like 3 years ago.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it's been a while. So I wasn't really sure what he did. We went over to Steve's studio, same place where we did Dealing with Demons. We went over to his place, set up the drums, and I just let Austin do his thing. He was really the right guy to do it, because when I got the songs back, I edited all the drums and started recording guitar, but I started changing up a lot of things because of some of the drum parts that he had done. It inspired me to just rewrite some things in a different way. But Austin's a fantastic drummer. Even there's a lot of guys out there that watch him play that I really respect, that they just start drooling when they see Austin playing. He's just a maniac, and he's fun to work with. He's one of my best friends. I love the guy.
Did you have the whole record pretty much done during the pandemic? I mean, or did you kind of just put the finishing touches in between DevilDriver tours and such?
Let's see. I think I finished recording this record in 2022.
Okay.
And when you're starting a new project, which is something I've never done before. I've been a DevilDriver for 20 years now.
Jesus Christ.
Yeah. I joined in 2004. So next April's 20 years.
Fuck.
Wow.
Yeah.
Congrats.
Thanks. So let's see. I had 5 people do test mixes for me. And the guy that ended up doing the best mix was Lasse Lammert from Germany. Works on a lot of Napalm Records bands, and I've known him for a long time. He'd always come out to DevilDriver shows, and when we would play Germany. And my friend Shane had started a band, funny enough, with a couple people from Santa Barbara, one of which was a guy named Cliff Ross, who was my roommate my last year before I joined DevilDriver in Santa Barbara, and he and I had a band together that we were working on called No Love Lost. But I joined DevilDriver, and No Love Lost just kind of fell apart. And another guy named Greg from another local band called Carried by Six in Santa Barbara, they did a song together just remotely, because they're, Cliff lives in Florida, Shane and Greg live in Santa Barbara. And they're called Embers of Dawn. And they've only released a few songs, but I listened to one of the tracks and I was like, who the hell mixed this? And Shane's like, Lasse. And I'm like, oh, yeah.
Oh, that guy.
He was the last guy I thought of to do a test mix for me. And I was like, oh, my God, I can't believe I hadn't thought about him. So I hit him up, sent him the tracks, and waited until he had time to mix one. And it was pretty obvious. There were a couple guys that mixed that they were all great. But something about Lasse, and I will most likely be working with him in the future when I release more songs, which will probably come in April of next year.
Nice. Well, now that obviously you guys did the tour with Cradle. Was that basically the last DevilDriver thing until whenever this new record comes out? Or
yeah, we're working on new songs. Miller and I are writing together again, the first time in 13 years. We've got a ton of material already, so we're kind of ahead of the game. But we do plan on doing another record next year, and but I don't think DevilDriver will be on tour for a while.
So, are you going to tour with Verona?
Hopefully. I don't really have a band solidified yet, but I haven't. That's once I get the record out, I'll start concentrating on finding the people, and I'm fairly certain who I'm going to use, but that's a secret right now.
So talk about the last few years for you. Obviously, the lockdowns and whatnot with COVID. And then obviously, but when touring starts back up, Des does some Cold Chamber stuff, then some DevilDriver, then some Cold Chamber. So has it been tough on you creatively, and maybe I don't know, financially, just kind of getting out of the groove of maybe the typical touring cycle for DevilDriver?
At the time, I suppose I could have used the break when COVID hit, and we had canceled a bunch of tours before COVID hit because of Des's wife's skin cancer that she had to take care of.
Right.
So didn't really bother me a whole lot. I'm kind of built for a pandemic. I've got my studio in my house.
You got your bomb shelter and your bunker.
Yeah, and I mean, yeah, there were a lot of positive things for me that happened during the pandemic. One, it was really easy for me to get down to Huntington Beach to go surfing in the morning. Surfing
you didn't get yelled at or anything? I thought they were telling people to stop surfing.
There were places up in Palos Verdes near my house, which is kind of like the ritzy area of the South Bay. And yeah, I got kicked out of there a couple times, I'm like walking down with my board and the cops are like, fuck. And
it's wild. It's wild that you're out in the ocean by yourself.
Right.
And they're like, no, none of that.
Yeah. But the guys in Orange County, which is where Huntington Beach is, were pretty cool. They, you go down there, you get in the water early in the morning, and then right around 11 o'clock, they drive the boat over and just be like, all right, everyone, one more wave. And
one more wave and you're done.
But the downside of that is everyone during the pandemic wanted to learn how to surf. Everybody.
Right.
So the crowds just got out of control. People not knowing what they're doing, getting ran over. I've completely changed where I surf now. There's just some areas that are just completely wrecked.
Oh yeah.
As far as crowds go around here.
So you supplemented your income by Mike Spreitzer surf lessons.
No, luckily I was still able to do a bunch of studio work, and I've written music for a music library called Extreme Music that places songs into movies and commercials.
Oh, right on.
I was watching Cobra Kai, and one of the songs came on there.
Nice.
And I mean, it was a song that I written so long ago. I had to Shazam it just to make sure.
Is that me?
Yeah, it's luckily I had some mailbox money rolling in, and I didn't have to go to the government and ask for any kind of assistance, relief, whatever, just made it work.
I wanted to talk a little bit more about Verona too. It's like just in regards to the name and the imagery and all that. I mean, the imagery looks very Hellraiser-y. Was that like kind of?
I'm not a fan of Hellraiser, so no.
Good to know.
I'm not a horror movie fan.
Oh, all right.
When I was producing Wednesday 13's record, Necrophase, I had almost the whole band in my studio. We're working on stuff, and they're like, Mike, have you seen this movie? Have you seen that movie? Like The Omen, Carrie.
Right.
And God, there were a few others that, like The Classes, Exorcist. I'd never seen it, any of them.
I'm right there with you on all that. Yeah.
So I actually went and sat down, like after we were done recording, I'm like, I need to go watch some of these movies so they don't fire my ass.
Right.
So no, I've never been a fan of horror. I saw another guy made a comment on the imagery saying it was very related to Saw. I can't watch those movies. I saw the first one. It was fantastic.
But you're like, I'm good.
I'm just not into watching people get tortured whatsoever, even though
whatever.
I had someone waterboard me in one of the teasers, but so, honestly, I don't know where these ideas come from. It's just 1 minute I don't have an idea. The next minute I do. And I just kind of build on it and share my ideas with some people, get some feedback,
right.
Change things up a little bit. It's
I will say that everything that's out so far, Instagram and everything else so far, looks very thought out. It looks very planned, because when I do stuff, I'm like, oh, I'm going to do that and I'm going to do it like this and just blah, like all over the internet. And when I was looking up the stuff, it seemed to be very, very well done. How about that?
Thank you. It has been thought out. Very thought out.
For 3 years.
Oh my God. Yeah, it's been a long time.
I was going to say that's got to be the best part about this whole thing is just the fact that after 3 years, like going, holy shit, this thing comes out on fucking Saturday, like just to know that the final product is finally here after 3 years. I mean, that's got to be an incredible feeling.
I thought I was going to be a nervous wreck. Like leading up to this thing, I go to bed, just been like, dude, I don't know. I'm like, I want to be on vacation when I release this thing.
Yeah.
But funny enough, I'm pretty relaxed about it.
Nice.
Like I'm I'm not worried. I've gotten a lot of good feedback from the few people that have listened to it, and I'm not worried about it. You know, it's not going to be for everybody, but I do think a lot of people are going to like it.
So I'm just kind of curious, like, about the name, because I know there's a painting called Venus in Verona. Where did you get Verona on Venus?
It's not that cool of a story. So I was watching space stuff on YouTube, and the Russians sent a rover to Venus, I think in like the late 60s, 70s, something like that. And it was called Venera. So I was trying to think of a band name. You know, I had the long list of names in my phone that just completely sucked. And I know I wanted to make a cool symbol with whatever I came up with. I wanted it to be symmetrical. I like things to be symmetrical. I don't know why. But I didn't like the name Venera. So I don't know how I came up with Verona. But I stuck that in place of Venera, and that was it. And, you know, then I get on my computer, you know, is the .com taken? No. Is it trademarked? No. Is there another band called it? No. Is the Gmail even available? Yes. Like everything was available.
Wow.
You know, on all the social medias. So as soon as I came up with the name, I was just like, okay, let's go reserve everything that I could possibly can think of. And that made it really easy.
So when I was looking it up, because I was looking up the name and everything, and I saw, oh, there's a painting called, you know, Venus on Verona, and all this kind of things, and it's like all about like the fickleness of women and everything. I was like, wow, I wonder if that has to do. Wow,
he's making a statement here.
On Venus. I'm like, man,
I think I remember seeing that long time ago when I did the initial Google search. Long time ago.
I will say that
I've had the name since like 2019, maybe even 2018.
I will say that your setup right now is probably the classiest I've ever seen in an interview.
Thank you. Great screen. I'm going for a very Victorian decor in my household these days. Do you like?
It's very nice. Very nice.
Thank you.
It's very hotel lobby.
Let's dive into a little bit of new metal. Obviously you being in DevilDriver, and then, you know, within the last, you know, how many ever years, you know, Dez has kind of started to play Cold Chamber songs in DevilDriver. So how is it for you to kind of play like Loco and things like that, kind of adding those songs into the set?
We only added them for that one tour with Static X, which I think was the right place to do it, you know, opening up for Static X when they had got back together with the original lineup and all that. At that point in our career, I was totally okay with it. I think if you would have asked, that Dez would have asked us to do it 10 years prior, I would have been like, no, like I will, but I won't like it.
I don't like it.
But I love playing it. You know, Fiend is my favorite Cold Chamber song. Love that song. And, you know, gotta love Loco. Funny thing is, like, my first experience listening to Cold Chamber, it was also my first experience listening to Cradle of Filth, because I made a friend in high school. He had just gotten expelled from one school and came to my school. And he was this little gothic kid named DJ. And he handed me a tape one day with, I think it was Cradle of Filth's Cruelty and the Beast and Cold Chamber's first record on the other side. And who would have thought that I'd be touring, you know, being in a band with Dez one day and then, you know, going on tour with Cradle of Filth. But it was fun. You know, it was not a discussion on these last two tours we did whether or not we were going to play any Cold Chamber, because he's out with Cold Chamber,
right?
You know, just, you know, before and after. So wasn't didn't even come up as a topic.
When you start into Loco, do you notice like a look on people's face, like, holy shit, they're playing this? I mean, I guess so far into the tour that people might know that you guys are going to play it, but those first few shows where people are going to see the shows, like, holy shit, they're actually going to play this song.
I would definitely say that when we played those two songs was probably the rowdiest part of the night in some cities.
Yeah, I could say that.
Not every city, but a lot of them. It was a lot of fun to play, you know, and something Des had been talking about it for a long time about us adding in a couple a couple Cold Chamber songs into the set. It was fun.
Yeah, no, definitely a good tour to do it.
I'd do it again.
So actually kind of stapling onto the new metal thing, you know, back in like 01, 02 and everything, you were doing that band Grolby. So how, I mean, that was at a time when new metal was really kind of at its nexus in a way. How was that different? I mean, I haven't listened to it, so I don't really know, but I'm just kind of curious, like how did it relate to kind of what was going on at the time?
I didn't really have anything to do with the writing process in Grolby. You know, I kind of started working on some stuff when I joined the band, but I was only in the band for 8 months, and then the band broke up. But looking back, there's only 2 songs that were recorded, and they were you could say they were loosely produced by Mikey Doling from Snot, and they're not very good recordings. I do have them. They've never been released anywhere. But looking back, yeah, I guess you could kind of say that Grolby had a bit of a new metal vibe to it. A lot of Grolby riffs have turned into DevilDriver riffs.
Oh, gotcha.
Well, actually, a lot. But there's definitely, like, Ripped Apart it wasn't a Grolby song, but there was one song that we had called God Blast in Grolby that I always felt like Ripped Apart was like John Berkman took God Blast and just made it better, and we turned it into a DevilDriver song. But there's a fair amount of riffs out there on Fury and Last Kind Words. I think after that we ran out of riffs from Grolby and just started doing our own thing. But
now we have to write original songs.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, but I mean, to tell you the truth, I'm not a huge fan of new metal. You know, I love Korn. Do love Deftones. I really like Cold Chamber. And then there's a bunch of bands that, like, I wanted to get your opinion. You guys asked me to make a list. And some of the bands that I got on my list, I don't even know if they're technically new metal or not. Like,
well,
would you like Static X? Would you consider them a new metal band?
So one of the things that we were discussing, actually, especially in our last interview with Jared from Head PE, was how new metal was both an era and an ethos. So not necessarily particularly a musical style, but kind of like what was going on during that time. So I find that, like, you know, Static X, because Static and System of a Down, both considered new metal, but really very separate in their own way, you know? So it kind of, in a weird way, I feel like it defies that sort of musical, it's a genre, but at the same time, it's more of like an era in a way. So I think that's why so many bands sort of fall into it that might not have, you know, like you wouldn't compare Static X to Limp Bizkit, you know what I'm saying? So so I think your list could very much be kind of a mishmash of all the stuff that was going on at that time, but still kind of fits within that ethos.
Well, in that case, yeah, there a lot of people, I kind of get roasted for this sometimes, but I really like Orgy's first record, Candy Ass.
Candy Ass.
I had that on
that's a great
repeat for a long time when that came out.
I love that record from start to finish. I love every single song on it.
Yep. Can't argue that.
So you want to do your top 5 just to kind of bust it out?
Yeah, I guess it would be Korn's first record, Orgy, Candy Ass, Static X's Wisconsin Death Trip. I haven't listened to it in a long time, but I really was into Godsmack's first record.
Okay.
And Gravity Kills.
Okay.
That's interesting. Because that was kind of along, not along the lines of Static X, but it definitely had that sort of industrial kind of vibe to it, but still sort of fits in there. So I think that list is amazing, actually.
Yeah. I mean, you know, God, and actually out of all those bands, I got an honorable mention is Fear Factory's Obsolete. I listened to that a lot. When I was 18, you know, I moved to Santa Barbara to start college, and anytime that I put on that record, I'm like instantly back to my freshman year of college.
Oh yeah.
You know, I love that record. And you know, there's a place called the Ventura Theater, you know, and I spent a fair amount of time going to shows there when I was in Santa Barbara, because it was like a lot of bands wouldn't go through Santa Barbara. They'd kind of skip it, but they'd go through Ventura.
Right.
And I saw a band, I don't know who they were opening up for. I cannot remember, called Sinistar. You guys ever heard of them?
I have, but that's like eons ago.
Yeah. And I really liked them. I thought they were good live. I went out and bought their record after I saw them. And, you know, whether it's withstand the test of time is a completely different discussion. But, yeah, when you guys you told me to make my list, I put them on and listened to them. They only did one record and they broke up. So
yeah,
I love KMFDM too. They're probably one of the first 5 industrial bands I got into when I was a kid.
What actually, I'm curious to hear that. What were your 5 industrial bands?
All right. Well, I think Nine Inch Nails and Ministry got me started. KMFDM. God, who else? Marilyn Manson. I wouldn't really call him an industrial artist.
He the line, but not really.
Yeah, and Skinny Puppy was a big one for me. I'm actually going to go see them on Thursday. Love Skinny Puppy. It took a little work for me to get into Skinny Puppy.
Same here.
I had a lot of friends that were into them, and I put them on. It's a little bit too noisy for me, but it was just like one of those things where I couldn't look away. And like I just had to spend some time with it to really appreciate it. And then they broke up for like 10 years. They got back together and they wrote that record, Great or Wrong of the Right. And I would definitely say that album's a little bit more listenable for the general public than some of their older material.
Right.
But it's one of my favorite records. Like they kind of did the same thing that Alice in Chains did. They stopped for a while and you get Black Gives Way to Blue. Just like, wow. Yeah, this works.
Yeah. But that's awesome though. I didn't realize that you kind of came up from such a kind of more of an industrial sort of thing, That's fucking rad.
Had to be around the time that Nine Inch Nails released Wish.
I
think that's when I really started to get into it. And then around the same time, even KROQ was playing Psalm 16 New World Order by Ministry.
K-Rock was playing NWO?
Yes.
Really? God, I can't even imagine.
I remember they had a contest. You know how you used to call up and the line would always be busy and you just sit there and do redial. They had a contest to see who could guess the name of the record. Because the name of the record isn't on the record. Yeah, that everyone's like Keanu or whatever that weird symbolism is on the front. I don't even know what it means.
Right.
But
and then it's just like, no, it's Psalm 69. We're like, what?
Well, that's not even the full title.
Yeah, The Way to Succeed
and the way to suck eggs. Yeah. So I don't think anyone had the right answer, if I remember correctly.
That doesn't sound like anyone would.
No.
And I couldn't even imagine I mean, see, we had at WSOU in Jersey, so we had, they were playing Ministry, they were playing all that sort of stuff. But yeah, so that's why I'm always curious about like kind of how industrial sort of grew out here also.
You had to look for it, man.
Yeah.
Like there was a magazine that luckily I lived right down the street from a Tower Records. Like I could skate there in 10 minutes from my house. And there was a magazine called Propaganda.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
And they did not come out every month. I think they came out like 4 times a year. But I would just grab that magazine and, read the article about them. And, I was more into industrial than I was goth. There are a lot of goth bands that I like, but I was always kind of leaning more toward the industrial stuff.
Right. Just a lot heavier.
Yeah. That's how I discovered Skinny Puppy. So I would just, back in the day, just unless your record store was cool with you returning CDs, you just had to go and buy them and hope for the best. There's a few that just didn't grow on me. I'm totally going to butcher the name, but there's a band from Germany that's a lot more on the side of industrial, like experimental industrial. Neubauten. I was into Neubauten.
Yeah.
And I've tried over the years to get into them.
Me too, dude.
No, I
just remember seeing Henry Rollins with the tattoo and I was like, I gotta check it out, man, because I was all into Rollins's like spoken word stuff. It's like you put on Neubaut, and it's just like chainsaws against like metal, and you're just like, yeah.
Do you remember a band called Babyland?
Babyland?
They were kind of on the same. They could definitely open up for Neubaut, let's put it that way. And they came to there was a place called the Living Room in Santa Barbara. It was like kind of like. It was a music venue, but it was more like a youth center. And everyone played there because there just wasn't really that many places to play. The guy that did sound was a volunteer. Everyone that worked there that were volunteers. And Babyland came. And I was just like, no fucking way. And it was definitely one of the weirdest shows I've ever seen. And then another weird band that came through Santa Barbara that I could not believe is called Das Ich from Germany.
What were they called?
Das Ich. DASICH. Like, it's after a book that I believe Freud wrote. It basically means the me or the I.
Oh, right.
They're actually one of my favorite industrial bands too, but I didn't get into them until I was out of college. I tried to get into them when I was in college. I found a record at a used record store called Morgue, and that was the wrong record to buy. It was I went and saw them play at this. It's a really weird story. There was a guy that was a promoter in Santa Barbara, and I think he was independently wealthy. He was also a heroin addict, and he must have reached out to the guys in the band and offered to fly them over, just to pay. They flew from Germany for one show, maybe two. Yeah. And there weren't there's not that many people into industrial music in Santa Barbara, far from it. So I want to say that there was less than 100 people at the show. There might've been 50 people there, but they were great. So that's where actually I didn't buy the CD. I bought the CD at the show, and I asked the merch girl, like, well, which one would you recommend? And she said this one, and it was more like a soundtrack than it was an actual album that they had released. And then I kind of threw them away for like 5 or 6 years because I just couldn't get into that record. And then I went out and bought another record, and I was just like, oh my God, these guys are fucking amazing. It's very dark, symphonic, industrial,
right?
And it's all in German too. So I think that turns a lot of people off because they don't like listening to it.
Especially when you start off with that real early old school industrial where it's like track one is like this guy banging a sledgehammer on steel, and you're like, that's track one, huh? Like,
I don't know how and when like the whole goth subculture got involved with industrial, because if you go way back to people that I can't even name, like I watched this great documentary on YouTube called Before Industrial Went Pop. And it's basically Trent Reznor and Ministry. Like they changed everything.
Right.
And I think like I would say Skinny Puppy, Ministry, and Nine Inch Nails, started to embrace the whole industrial thing. And, they had a very kind of, a goth look to them. But if you go before that, it's just like they look like scientists that were in a lab, just kind of nerdy looking, just making noise. And like, who else would be into that type of music? Like music nerds. That's it.
Right.
Everyone
looked like Thomas Dolby. Thomas Dolby meets fucking flock of seagulls. They all just kind of had like weird hair, but like the lab coats.
I wouldn't even say like just clean cut, like they work for NASA. Just watching that documentary, I was just like, this is so weird. And that really old school industrial music, I'm not into it. It's too experimental for me.
Right. Well, to kind of tie it back around to the new metal thing, it's kind of funny when you think about people like even like, I know you're not a big fan of new metal, but like people like Jonathan Davis and stuff who kind of came from that sort of gothy industrial kind of way. And same thing with Chino from Deftones and stuff like that, and just kind of how it's sort of morphed into what it has become. And now to see ultimately like DevilDriver, you know, which obviously I would never compare Devil Driver to, you know, 9 Inch Nails or anything like that, or Sisters of Mercy per se. But like to see the sort of evolution of it, you know, I think is pretty fucking fascinating. You know, that's why I'm, you know, even though you're not a new metal guy, it's like I really that makes me curious to hear what the rest of Verona is going to sound like as well, because, you know, it's like, how do you take, you know, stuff like Das Ich and, you know, KMFDM and all your and then mix it in with like Acid Bath at the very end, you know? It's like how I'm really curious to see what this progression is, because it really is. It's like this really weird kind of wave that I'm
well, you know, I kind of, before I started writing lyrics, which, you know, I had done it before and sang on stuff that's never been released, that will never be released, that's just sitting in a hard drive somewhere. But I was like, you know, I don't really know what kind of vibe I'm going to go for. But I like this Bones of Baby Doll song, and I love the way Dax Riggs sings. So I'm like, I'm just going to start with this. You know, that's where I started. It was the first song that I recorded on vocals.
Oh, wow. So you kind of just did that and then went sort of backwards in a way?
Yeah. Huh. I recorded vocals on that song, and that was it made things a little easier for me in the beginning, because if you've never sang before, write a cover, you know, make it your own. Then you don't have to worry about writing lyrics right off the bat, because, you know, if you've never written lyrics before, you're going to sit down and go, what the fuck should I write about? I got, you know, I got nothing. But and I didn't really want to be the singer of this band originally. You know, I had a couple people that I wanted to try out, and I started thinking, like, okay, what if the singer leaves one day, or we stop getting along? You know, it's then I'm gonna have to change singers, or I'm eventually gonna have to do it myself. And then album 2, album 3 is gonna be different than album 1. And I was just, I don't want that to happen. So eventually I came to the conclusion, it's just like, dude, I'm gonna have to figure out how to do it myself.
Right.
So
you're the only constant.
Yep. So yeah, luckily I can't fire myself. And I will remain the singer of Verona on Venus until the day I die. And I don't really have to, you know, I wanted to handle this band a lot like trying to handle this 9 Inch Nails. You know, it's the next album I really do want to collaborate, you know, with more people, you know, other than just Austin. And I think after, you know, I get the live band together, kind of see how we all work together, and you know, start collaborating with people.
Nice.
And doing a record by yourself takes a long time, because you second guess yourself a lot.
Oh, I can imagine.
Or at least I do. You know, it's like, okay, I have 4 options to put in this spot in the song. Which one do I go with? You know, when I was working on any number of DevilDriver records, you know, I'd have the guys there with me going A, B, C, or D. And everyone would go B. I'm like, all right, that made it easy. Move forward. Right. You know, when you're working all by yourself and you just work the way that I do, I'm very indecisive. And that's part of the reason why it took so long. But luckily now I have a direction. The next record is probably going to be even a bit more industrial than Popular Delusions. At least that's what I have in mind for it as of now. That could obviously change.
Right.
But
depending how you feel at the time.
Record number 2 is not going to take nearly as long. Hopefully by 2025, I'll have another record to put out.
Yeah, I mean, because at that pace, we would be looking like, what, 2028 for the next record?
That's not going to happen. That's not going to happen.
I'm stoked to check this out, man, for sure.
Yeah, it's going to be a lot of fun. Well, as we wrap it up, man, when it is released, are you going to be like eyeballing the comment section, or are you going to try to stay away from it?
I don't know yet. We'll see. I'll definitely check out the comments that are left on my own pages, as far as, you know, Blabbermouth and Loudwire and Metal Sucks and all those guys. I might take the Joe Rogan approach and just put my blinders on.
All right.
You know?
Probably for the best.
You know, I thought it would bother me. People talking shit on DevilDriver has never bothered me.
Mm-hmm.
you know, and we got a lot of shit in the beginning.
Yeah.
When, you know, because nu metal in the early days of DevilDriver was a very dirty word. Like, you did not want to be associated with that genre whatsoever for some reason, which is, looking back, is totally ridiculous. And, you know, it took a lot to prove to the hardcore metal crowd that DevilDriver was worthy of their acceptance. But we eventually got there. You know, it took right around the time we released our third record. Nobody was talking shit anymore. I mean, your regular people were, but it wasn't like masses of people trying to hate on us because we had Dez from Cold Chamber in the band, you know?
Right.
But we got past it, and, you know, I just have learned to, I mean, there's also the fact that it seems like the more people that talk shit, the bigger you are in some cases. So,
right. If they're not saying anything, that's probably the worst thing.
When they're not saying anything, that's probably the worst. So,
Right.
I'll, you know, like I said, it just doesn't bother me. You know, I'll look at them, I'll laugh. Sometimes I'll say, well, that was creative. I mean, even when I had to cancel a tour because I had a seizure the day that we were supposed to leave and ended up in the hospital. I remember reading a comment. I don't remember what side. It was probably Blabbermouth. Be like, and one guy was like, "This band sucks. Too bad it didn't kill him."
Like,
wow.
I was like,
geez.
Wow. Like, you really don't like our band, do you?
Right. Like, they're like, damn, we were so close. 1 down, 4 to go. You know, like, dude, that's fucking morbid, man. Fuck.
Yeah, that was brutal.
Although that would make for a great DevilDriver song. Go 1 down, 4 to go.
Death by seizure.
Nice. Well, once again, the band is Verona on Venus. Rodent is out now, and Popular Delusions out January 19th. Once again, man, Mike, thanks for taking some time here. New pod, notfest.com.
Thank you. It's good to see you guys.
Yeah, you too, dude.
Man.